the way the dynamic of our marriage works is if someone's not happy about something, it's said like there and then, or it's said by the end of the day of, maybe when we're sitting down, or, you did something and I'm it's getting quite frustrating. I don't like when you do that. So, those kind of conversations are had there and then so we can know how to fix it, rectify it and move on.
Welcome to a new season of Leadership Live podcast, where talented people become extraordinary leaders. I'm Daphne Horowitz, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and talk about real leadership issues. Down to earth, solid, caring and confident leadership. No theory, no pie in the sky, no frills or fluff. Because this is what the world needs most right now. For you to lead with confidence, clarity and impact, so that you can build a business that builds people, grows profit, and makes a difference. Today, we are talking to an awesome team of two, a husband and wife team who are each holding down their own day job while they run an online e-commerce business together and also host a podcast to inspire young entrepreneurs. Mike and Roz are a power team, driven, loving, and full of energy. It was an absolute pleasure coaching them today. They know how to work together and how to hold the foundations of a strong business and personal relationship. And yes, that definitely has its challenges. So they decided to have a coaching session with me to help them get their thoughts and plans in alignment with each other. And here it is. In this coaching session, we created some structure around expectations and outcomes and structures for their own personal relationship. As you listen, you will hear the insights popping for both Mike and Roz. You'll hear how they recognize each other's strengths, each in different areas, and when combined, they make a winning team. A great session for opening communication, aligning expectations, and finding connection time with each other. Mike and Roz are a great example of how you can work with your spouse and make it work. It definitely has its challenges, but it does look like Mike and Roz are heading for an outstanding business by creating awareness from the beginning about how they can work together. Have a listen and enjoy. And while you listen, think about your own relationships and how your work is impacted by them. And I'm sure you'll be able to pick up some great tips from our conversation today. And as always, for great leadership resources and information about our events and programs, head on to my website at daphnaHorowitz.com. Grab yourself a copy of my new book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders, available on Amazon, and let me know, what are you thinking about today? So welcome, Michael and Roz. I'm really excited to have you on the show today, and we are going to just dive right in. So what is the topic that you would like to discuss in our coaching session today?
Yeah, thank you, Daphne. Good to meet you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us on the show.
It's a pleasure, as usual.
Absolutely. So we currently have our individual respective roles or jobs, but at the same time we have one or two, we call it side hustles, that we both are aligned on or aligned to. And I think the challenge we have right now is, I won't say time management, but working effectively on our joint goals and our joint plans. We work effectively together when things are aligned well, or when things aren't aligned well, we're not working as well as we could be. So we just need help in kind of steering us in the right direction in terms of how we can work effectively to generate the results, but still yet concentrate on the things which we do individually in our own time, if that makes sense. So
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a let's separate, and I'd love to hear from each of you. What is it that you would like to achieve? So if this was going to be a brilliant conversation that you walk away with exactly what you wanted, what Mac, what would you want this conversation to really enable you to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it will be one, to be able to understand clear responsibilities for Roz and I. So that would be the first one. But of course, both of us agree that these are the things we both need to do to achieve what we want to achieve. Two, really understanding the root cause of the challenges, or whatever we call the challenges. And finally, just making sure that we're both aligned. I mean, we are aligned. We have regular catch-ups, but it would be good to understand at the end of it, how we can align and be effective together moving forward.
Yeah. So, Roz, before you dive in, I actually want to ask you, what does alignment look like to you, Mike?
To Mike, that's my question.
Yes.
Yeah. Alignment basically meaning we are on the same beat, right?
What does that mean? On a practical level, so you talk about your side hustles, and I know there's a couple. So is there one in particular, or is it overall?
I think they're both as equally important. The first one, I mean, we run a shoe store, right? An online e-commerce store.
Yeah.
We've had it for coming up to 3 years or gone 3 years. Of the last maybe year and a half, we haven't spent as much time as we should be.
Yeah.
On that particular business. We know the potential is huge, but it's just time management. Alongside, we launch a podcast as well, so the podcast takes a lot of our time, and we find ourselves putting more time in the podcast and not so much time in the shoe store. So the alignment would be just understanding.
So those are two side hustles you're talking about, the podcast and the shoe store. Okay, great. So
Correct.
You've been putting in more time into the podcast. The shoe store has been a little bit on the back burner, but it's still running and active and alive.
It is still running, it's still active, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on it, like on the branding side and a few other bits and bobs. But it is still running, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess when I say alignment, what I mean is knowing when we should spend time on the shoe store, right? And knowing when we should spend time on the podcast, and understanding that, when I come to Roslyn and maybe asking for specific things, because we have clear understanding of what the roles and responsibilities, it's she's not kind of startled because I'm asking this at a time when she's not ready to deliver that, if that makes sense. So just alignment in terms of knowing when to ask, what best time, because obviously she's got her own stuff running as well, so that's what I mean about alignment. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the two side hustles, you've each got your own job, and somehow you need to give everything attention as it comes on. And I will just say, you're also married. Do you have children?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, good. Well, not good, sorry, but I was just thinking.
Time, right? Yeah.
All in good time. Right. Yeah. Okay, so Roz, let's hear your side of it.
Yeah.
What would you, if this was going to be, I'm going to remind you of the question, if this was going to be a really, really good conversation, coaching conversation for you, what would you walk away with?
So for me, again, I would probably say touching on the base of alignment is key for us because as you mentioned, we both live in different, sometimes it can be hectic. You don't know when it's hectic. Workflows basically arise and then it drops down. And then one thing I'll probably say is consistency, because sometimes what you'll find is that you might be consistent on one project, which, for example, could be SNL, so Slippers and Loafers, which is our business.
Oh, that's cute.
And then just do a shameless plug there.
Yeah, exactly, go for it.
And then obviously we have the podcast, which is Coaches and Mentors and Wrapped. So sometimes what we might find is that we put more, we might channel more of our extra time into one, and then what you'll find is that the other one just slowly starts to dip. So it's just about, how do we manage consistency between us? And the third one I'll probably say is communication. We always hear the saying about men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right? And sometimes it's quite difficult in terms of how, you might interpret something as a woman and how bad that might sound like, especially being married together and being in business together. Sometimes it has its ups and it has its downs. Let's face it, even with business partners, sometimes it's always not going to be rosy, but it's always about finding that contrast, I guess. So I think I've listed 3 things there for me, but yeah, those are the 3 things I'll probably say.
Amazing. So actually what you've got and you've spoken about is you've got a partnership, a business partnership, and you've got a marriage. So you've got both of those. And often a business partnership is like a marriage in itself. So there's added complexity, or maybe once you figure it out, it all, figures out across the board. Roz, when you heard Michael talking about alignment.
Yes.
What came up for you?
What came for me is it's very true. I think one point you touched on is coming to me at a certain time and then asking whether I have the availability to do something at a certain time. And I think sometimes what happens is because you live together, sometimes you get into the habit of thinking, oh, this person can just do this. Let me give that task to us, the spouse, to actually do. But sometimes we actually don't know the timings, or maybe when that person is actually having a time where they're thinking, no, I'm just going to take a break. I cannot do anything else. So I think, when he touched on that, that's what kind of aligned with me in terms of, how do we find that middle ground? How do we come together to work on, our e-commerce business and the podcast? How do we fit in breaks for each other? How do we fit in breaks for individually? So, being aligned to the right direction, but knowing when is the right time to take what direction, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Okay. And I think you're already touching on what are the root problems, which was one of your questions, Mark, around what are the root problems here. And it sounds like this constant availability, so not having sort of set boundaries around the different areas of work, something around consistency, communication, and really getting aligned in those different areas. So Mark, what came up for you when Roz was talking about her 3 points?
So for Rose's one, the consistency, I think that's also very key. She's right on the money on the consistency. And in fact, we even have an example the other day on the podcast where, obviously the branding, so just making sure that when we're using a particular brand or format, it carries out all the way through. So I agree with the consistency. The communication, again, I agree with that. I think in times when I've gone to Roslyn knowing that I know this is the right time to ask of something, right? Because she's not slammed doing, creativity thinking or doing something else, she would respond to me in the right way. Whereas if I pick the wrong time, because sometimes I'm impatient and I want things done now, the response isn't what I want to hear. So again, the communication is very important. And I think you mentioned definite timings. It's about learning. And I think I'm getting there. I'm not there yet, but it's knowing what time to ask for what, right? So I think you're right with the themes you've identified, yeah.
So let me ask you both to think about it a little bit. Say you are 1 year in the future, okay? We're February next year and things are working brilliantly. You've achieved this level of alignment around the different areas that you've spoken about. And your businesses, side hustles, whatever, the work, whatever is going exactly as you want. What does it look like? I want you to take me there. Take me to a year ahead and tell me, what does your life look like when everything's running absolutely smoothly how you would like?
Yeah. So let's say a year down the line, and again, we're taking those two businesses, right? The podcast and the
no,
shoe
so I
store.
want you to describe all of it. Just take
all of it. Okay.
Yeah, into
the entire.
Next
What
year
does the day
and
look
say,
like?
This is what's happening for me right now. This is what my week looks like. I don't know. Do you still have your job? Do you have? Where's the podcast? Where's the shoe store? What's actually happening for you? And you've now stepped into a time machine, and you're a year ahead of today, and you're talking in present tense.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, my 9 to 5 will still be my current job, right? Which is what I do. The mornings would be the business. So we have the mornings, i.e., let's call it from 5 to 8. That's working on our side hustle. So I call it, wake up in the morning, do my quiet time, plan around, SNL, plan around the podcast. And that's on a regular basis, on a daily basis. 9 o'clock hits. I jump onto my normal work. I'd love for Rose and I, maybe to have, weekly catch-up sessions, for example, maybe Wednesdays, where Wednesday is for SNL and maybe Thursday is for podcasts. We tend to record during the evenings. So those recording times we're aligned on. We know the recording days and the times, but it's the follow-up stuff to it. So again, maybe on a Thursday, we have an agreement to say we're spending an hour on the podcast and the branding or the shoe store, and knowing just set times where we sit down and actually think deeply through the business, whether it be thinking financially, the growth of the business, whether it be the branding, whether it be the people, whether it be scaling. We have those set times. And I think for me, that's how I look at it. By that, a year's time, we have some benchmarks that we're trying to hit in terms of the podcast and in terms of, the e-commerce business. It's all about growth for us. For the podcast, about
so where
reach.
are you, if you are now in that year ahead, where are you? What have you achieved? You've hit the benchmark. So what have you achieved?
From the growth perspective on the podcast, we're hoping to have maybe achieved something like 3,000 to 5,000 downloads, right? We're currently just gone 1,000.
Okay, so you have achieved, right? Because you're in February 2021 and you're looking back and say, we've achieved our 5,000 downloads. Yeah. Yay, well done, Mike. Okay, correct. Fantastic. You've achieved 5,000 downloads. What do you want to achieve? What have you achieved on the SNL?
From the SNL perspective, we want to be able to grow first year of, let's call it 80 to 100,000 revenue. From now, if you ask me from now, a year from now, everything is aligned. That's what we're looking at, 82,000 revenue or turnover. And we look back and we think, oh, wow, the last year we've had our branding, revitalized to what we wanted to look like or what we wanted it to look like. And we have, one or two people that are supporting us, because areas that we can't do ourselves, we've managed to find somebody in the last year to support us to do those things.
Great.
I think for me that would be a good year on both the podcast and SNL. Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned that your mornings, before 9 a.m., you are working on the different businesses. You have a catch-up meeting Wednesday for the SNL, Thursday's podcast, and everything seems to be just running smoothly. How do you feel when this is happening? You've achieved this revenue, you've got the downloads, your time is in place and sorted out. How do you feel?
I think the feeling will be great. It will be, So I'm going to pause
there because you keep on going into present tense and into future tense. I will feel this, I will achieve that. And I want to say that from a brain perspective, if you can put yourself already there and speak as if it's already happened, you are generating new neural pathways and a new way of thinking about the future. So when our brain gets a message, this will happen sometime in the future, our brain says, oh, there's plenty of time, I don't need to worry about it now. But if you kind of dive forward and then go back and say, this has happened or it is happening, your brain's already getting a much more urgent message that something's going to happen, and it starts your thinking processes in a different way. So it's a really, really useful exercise to be able to, when you are visioning or setting goals for the future, put yourself there and speak or write as if it's already happening or happened.
Understood. Okay. Yes. So it feels great that we've achieved.
Great. What feels great?
It's the growth, right? Knowing we've moved the needle, knowing we had targets and we've achieved it. It's a fulfillment, and it feels good that we're going to even go beyond that, because it's about setting the foundation. And I look at it as the last year, we've used it as the foundation setting. We have a platform to now elevate to, greater heights. So it feels great. And we know that when we set our mind on something, we can achieve it. And already we've done it in the last year. So it's about, okay, let's reach the impossible now. Let's set ambitious goals and let's surpass it.
So you're saying the basis is done and now you're ready for that next level. And how's your relationship with Roz?
Oh, it's amazing.
In February, remember?
Yeah.
What does it look like? What does it look like? How are you managing with the boundaries and the communication and all of those stuff? Remember when we spoke a year ago?
Yes. No, it's great. I mean, we've improved our time management in terms of, some of the challenges that we had at the time. We know when to discuss a particular business or a particular initiative. We're taking good enough holidays to be able to do some meetings during the holidays, kind of taking us away from our common environment. And it feels great that we can do that, because, we're getting different perspectives to things when we're away from our surroundings, perhaps. So that's also helped out massively. And the fact that we've achieved something as a mutual achievement, again, that even feels even greater, because it's not just something that I did on my own or she did on her own. It was a collective effort. So imagine from our next goal of scaling the business, if two of us can achieve that, how much more can we do when the team is bigger? So that's kind of, what's motivating me even more so now. Yeah.
And what does Michael from a year ago need to know from this Michael that's sitting a year ahead and having achieved this basis and the relationship's great and the communication's great? What do you need to say to the Michael from a year ago?
I think what I should have said, or what I should say, is just always knowing to share your challenges with somebody external who can help you validate those challenges and give you direction. Because there's one thing knowing what direction you need, but there's always something you might not know if you speak to an expert. So speaking to Daphne a year ago as a coach in directing us and giving us some sort of the practical steps to get to where we wanted to get to, where we are at now, was vital. So for me, it's just talking to someone and sharing with an expert was invaluable. Yeah.
So getting that external help. Amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good. And what is one thing you implemented over the last year that made all the difference?
So the one thing was it was the planning. It was the planning. So we knew stuff that had to be done, but I think making it more concrete, and Ros knowing and I know and myself knowing that Thursdays are for SNL and Wednesdays are for the podcast. All the rest of the days, you're not obliged to, yes, you can think about the business and everything else, but you're not obliged, right? But those 2 days, I know you can come to me, I know I can come to you, and we set those days. So I think the planning was very important for me.
Awesome.
And not hustling her when I didn't need to hustle her. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Mike. Now, Roslyn, let's go over to you. You've heard Mike's vision and dream of a year ahead, and I'm going to ask you to join him in that time machine that took you forward, right? Yeah. You're in the time machine with Mike at the moment, and you're in February next year. What do you want to say about his picture? Where did his picture of this time really connect with you, and where doesn't it connect? Where do you want to make changes and adjustments?
I would say... Okay,
let's start with what connects. What connects?
Yeah, what connects. So what connected was a year by this time, reaching out to our reach. So reaching out, meeting the targets that we've basically set. So in regards to that being the podcast and that being the slippers and loafers, dedicating time. So, forming habits, I think, is really key, and then sticking to those habits.
Great.
So, if we said the Thursday, sticking to that Thursday, and then sticking with that date or the day that's been placed.
So I'm hearing one thing is actually saying what it is, and the other thing is making sure you stick to it.
Yes.
What's not connecting, or what do you want to add to his picture or change?
What's not connecting is that children can be involved.
Okay.
And that flips the whole dynamic.
That's true.
So, yes, I'm a big believer in planning, of course. If you need to have a plan in order for you to be able to execute and know where you're going. But at the same time, things can actually interrupt those plans. And that's one thing that I'm coming to realize. So I think when you asked Mike about, it wasn't the changes. You said, so in 2022, God, I forgot the question. You asked him something on the lines of, how would he be able to, how when he looks back over the year, what is something that he's going to realize that he's taken into account of the things that he's planned and etc. And sometimes what I've realized is that sometimes you may plan, but it doesn't mean to say that everything listed on the plan is going to go exactly to the T.
Okay.
And I think where that falls in is my perfectionist, because sometimes I'm a bit of, if I've written it down, that's the way it has to go. But sometimes that's not life. So I think, that's where.
So if you're sitting now in 2021, a year ahead from, I'm
2022.
2022. Maybe is that why I was confusing you? I think. Sorry about that. I'm in 2020. Oh gosh. Okay, 2022.
Yeah.
If you now are talking to Roz of 2021 and saying, Roz, well done, you achieved this. Roz and Mark, you achieved this. Amazing. Well done. Hugely proud of yourself. What do you want to say to Roz from 2021?
Oh, that's to me?
No.
That's to you, Roslyn.
Oh, that's to me.
What do you speak to yourself? Yeah.
What would I say to Roslyn at the end of 2021? I would say, well done. Appreciate the small wins that you've been able to accomplish, however that may look like. 2, I would say, obviously, well done to myself and Mike as well, because like you mentioned, collaboratively, you can have one person in your team, but having 2 people in your team is, 2 people is one that creates a team, right? So there's no I in team. So, fantastic work for us to actually strive and get to, a certain point, even though we might not reach it or we might reach it.
You did reach it because you're in 2022.
We did reach it, yes, we're in 2022, yes. So, so well done. Hats off to both of us. What else would I say?
What is one thing you did over the last year that helped you get there?
The one thing we did over the last year that helped us get there? I think it's, again, going back to what I was saying, forming habits. So, implementing the habits and actually sticking to them, that's helped us get there. Because if you don't make the time, then how are you going to basically define what success looks like? Or, to that project or to what you're doing. So I think making the time and making the effort would help to get there. So, yeah.
So let me ask you this. If we come back to 2021 now, February 2021.
Yeah.
What requests do you have from Michael? Because what I'm hearing is you're both saying planning, you've got clear targets, planning will get you there, having those times in the week, setting up those habits and sticking to them.
Yeah.
What is one request you would make of Michael today?
Oh, wow. I would probably say take it easy. I think sometimes with Mike, again, I think it kind of complements the whole thing of me being a perfectionist. If you write the list down, that's how the list should basically go. That's how my mind works sometimes. I think that's one of my flaws. But I think with Mike, sometimes I think it's a case of taking a moment and embracing basically where you're at. Because you're taking a chill pill. I think sometimes because he's in more corporate and I'm more in public sector work, sometimes I've got more of a kind of a lenient aspect on how the overall project should look like. Whereas Mike is kind of, this is like this has to be this has to, like, it's like the order has to follow. And sometimes when it comes to working, I do follow order, but it's not rigid. So I think that's probably what I would say.
So in practical terms, what are you asking him for?
In practical terms, I'm asking for, I think, more us time.
What does that mean, more us time?
More us time means, so traveling more, which I think Michael actually touched on. But obviously in the circumstances, we're not really able to travel. So I think that's one thing that's highlighted from 2020. Are you saying
us time beyond the businesses, the side hustles, the career?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So actually it's Mark and Roslyn time, just to connect.
Yeah, so doing marriage stuff and not business.
Not talking about
stuff.
Work. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Because I think that tends to kind of seep in sometimes when we're not even trying to do that. Our mind might go to business and it's like, no, this is us time.
Because it's an easy thing to default to when you're spending time together to talk about the business. So you're actually saying, I really want to just spend some time together, that you create a rule, no talking about any of the businesses.
Yes. Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
That's something you would like. Mark, your turn. What request would you want to make of Roslyn?
So my request to Ros, I'm just thinking of her request to me. That was interesting. I agree with both actually, because my mind do drift most of the time thinking about initiatives and I need to separate it out. So I agree with that. I think just sticking to plan is why I asked for Ros. Yes, I understand that, when I plan something, I do want it to, obviously be delivered in the same way. I can be flexible, but I think I don't like procrastination. Now, when things have to get done today and it doesn't get done today, it means I've got more to do tomorrow. So I think my answer for us is, if we say we're going to do something today, if you can't do it, just give me advance notice. But it has to be done by that day, because otherwise, guess what? It has a knock-on effect on other things that we have planned for the rest of the. So I guess that's my ask, right?
That's your. So your ask. So let me just get that clear, because there was something about, first of all, planning. So have you got the plan in place? That Wednesdays for podcast, Thursdays for SNL. Have you got that in place, or you haven't created that yet?
We haven't formally created it. Okay. In our minds.
So I think the first ask is to actually sit down and create that. And then the second ask is to stick to it as much as possible. If you agree on something, to stick to it. And if something comes up, to have that conversation beforehand.
Yeah.
Is that your ask?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like, Mike, you're the planner, right?
Yes.
You know when things need to happen, and you have the timelines, but it also sounds like they're in your head. Yes,
we haven't documented everything, and I think that's what it goes back to. If we had some sort of a calendar there for the month to say, these are when I'm going to publish it, this is when I need the branding to be done by, all of that stuff, I think maybe it would eliminate a lot of this stuff. But we don't have it formalized on paper, or we don't.
And what I'm also hearing is that, Roz, you're feeling like it's all work and there's not enough, at least, connection time when you're not talking about work, and you need that in order to really feel fulfilled. So, Mike, I'm hearing you really need things to get done on time without the frustration of having to follow up and check in and all of that. And that gives you that sense of comfort and security and even love, I would say. And Roz, you feeling, I just need time away from all of that to really connect and really feel like we're in a relationship.
Yeah.
So that I can also feel then fulfilled and motivated to go and do my work.
Yeah. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Yes.
So what's happening for you hearing those two perspectives? I'd love to. So what's the ding, ding, ding? Tell me, Roz.
It's just you're hitting the nail on the head. Literally, that is it. Because I think even obviously we're currently in lockdown, so even with lockdown, even when we're taking time away, again, it's just like you're still seeping into.
It's not really away.
It's not away, and even we're seeping into ideas of business and what we can add, and it's like, no, let's not do that. Let's come away from that. But sometimes you get so caught up, and then it's like it's a coffee meeting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to be that.
It's not a relationship meeting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Mike, what do you hear when you heard that ding, ding, ding in the summary? What happened to you?
I think that's a good summary from you, to be honest. In terms of from both of us, me knowing if it's not, we've got our business planning days or times, and if it's not time to discuss business and it's about us, then it's about us. Then bring business up. I think that's pretty clear. That's loud and clear.
And here's what I want to offer you. Another, maybe, hopefully an insight is that, Mike, you've got an unbelievable skill. I can already see, you can see that monthly calendar in your head, and you're slotting in what needs to be done when and the times, and all. Just get it out of your head and onto paper. And that is your particular strength.
Yeah.
And Roslyn, your particular strength is in being able to say, hold on a sec. This is off, business is off limits for this time. This is our regenerate, refresh, renew, regroup, relationship time. Well, those are all words, right? So those are two strengths that are so critical to making any business or project or side hustle work, or marriage for that matter as well.
Yeah.
You've got to have that time where you're switching off, because that re-energizes you to be more creative and be more motivated. And you've got to be able to have those planning skills, which really slot everything into the right place and let you know what you need to do when. Yeah. So what I would really suggest is, Roz, you take that on yourself as saying when you are in that relationship time, when you start drifting into business, you've got permission to say, we're not talking about business at this time. This is our time. Yeah. And Mark, your assignment is to actually sit down and get the planning out of your head and onto paper and have those slots in. so that you eliminate the need also for the following up and the nagging and the micromanagement.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just making some notes. Okay, I think that's what we need to do. Basically. Yeah. Just getting it out on paper, and maybe somehow even showing it on on the section where we can all see it. So sometimes we can actually look at the calendar, maybe even be a step ahead of me, right? Because she knows maybe in 2 weeks' time there's something coming. Let me do it now, as opposed to it being in my head. And okay.
What are non-negotiables for you? And this is the last question. What is a non-negotiable? If you had to say, let's start with you, Roz. What is one thing you're asking Mike not to do again? Because that just really gets your goat and sends you on a counterproductive trip.
What a question.
Same for you, Mike. Is there anything? So before I asked you about what is a request that you have for each other, so this is a not request, an anti-request. What? Please stop doing this. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Instantly, no. Nothing doesn't come to mind that is so pressing that needs to be addressed. I'm just had the mind blank on that one. Nothing is coming to mind. I think that nothing's coming to mind at the minute.
Okay. No, I think because the way the dynamic of our marriage works is if someone's not happy about something, it's said like there and then.
Straight away.
Or it's said by the end of the day of, maybe when we're sitting down or, you did something and I'm just getting quite frustrated. I don't like when you do that. So, those kind of conversations are had there and then so we can know how to fix it, rectify it and move on.
Fantastic.
But that's not to say like sometimes the trend doesn't reappear and it's like, hey, buddy, we're doing this thing again. Can you stop this what you're doing? So
if you can call it, that's good. That's great.
Yeah. So I think that's probably why we can't think of it at this precise time because
we address it just there and then. Yeah.
Great. So then let's end off on some appreciation. Each of you, what do you want to appreciate each other for?
Oh wow. A lot of stuff. I mean,
just
choose one thing.
I would
just
say,
for this moment.
Appreciation of time going forward.
Say, Mike, I really appreciate you for what you bring.
Yeah, you got to look in my eyes and say it, mate.
Yes, you got to look in his eyes and say it, Mike.
Mike, I really appreciate you for your time.
Okay.
I really appreciate you for being there, especially during this lockdown. And my headphones are falling out. And I really appreciate, having you as a spouse. I don't think it's so cliche to say, but I don't think if I had anyone else, they'll be able to understand me the way you understand me. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate our ventures that we're doing together. That's one thing. And I appreciate this time.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, good. And I guess for me,
you can just say thank you. Just say thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm launching straight in. Thank you. I appreciate the love that you overwhelmingly just show all the time. I appreciate you being able to, again, understand me and, work with me on and we do our us times and on different things.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that we have a purpose together, and then obviously our purpose is always something which is driving us. So I just appreciate the time and everything else, getting to understand each other and our love and just basically what we stand for. I appreciate the fact that, we stand for giving back to the young people.
Yeah.
And again, that comes back to our purpose. So we are ever so learning, and I appreciate the fact that you have that growth mindset, right? When I check you check me, we get to uncover the why behind why we're checking each other, and find essentially improve on what we think is going to help with our course in the end. So I appreciate you for all of that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So to end off, what are you taking away? What is your aha moment from this conversation, or what is your takeaway that is something that you're going to carry forward and really create the plan and move the needle forward on alignment? Because that's where we started.
Yeah.
I mean, the two things that I'm going to implement straight away is formalizing the plan, right? Having some sort of a 30-day plan. So going into the month, we both know exactly deadlines and what needs to be done by what time. So I'm going to be doing that. And then I'm going to, just be mindful when it's, basically, have us time, which we do have. But of course, when we do have us time, sometimes I talk about, work or projects or whatever, but just be conscious of the fact that this is us time. And it's kind of, I'm not saying it's out of bound for talking about work or business, but just be conscious it's not the time for it. Yeah. If it comes up, fine, but got to nip it in the bud quickly and talk about more us. So that just the trigger for me, and then for me, formalizing the plan. Two things that I'm going to be doing.
And you can even write it down, in that moment. Let's write it down. We'll talk about it later, but this is us time. Yeah.
Yes.
And Roz, what is it for you? What's your aha or takeaway in terms of alignment?
In terms of alignment, because I'm thinking more into the future. So once we do have the plan, sticking to the task and basically seeing, I'm someone that once it's written down, it's in my face. I plan towards how I can basically meet that task goal. So I think having that clarity there, helping Mike whichever way I can, on both sides, and thanks. And just sitting down and just, having us time, talking to him.
So has this conversation helped you in terms of moving forward on alignment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it's always interesting how, as couples, we can have conversations, because we do have conversations and we talk about what's going well, what can we improve. But I think when you get an external person talk to both of us, it's not necessarily offloading to the person, but it's about somebody listening in and giving their perspective, but not just anybody, right? An expert in what they're doing, like yourself, and giving us the wise counsel on what you feel is best for us. And sometimes we kind of know the solution, but it's getting validated by you, right? It's about, this is what you got to do. And you've done that through asking us questions, right? So no, it's been super useful.
Awesome.
Appreciate
and I would
time.
suggest that when you've set up the plan, Mike, sit down together and agree the plan, because Roz, you might have some other input into it that doesn't work for you, or you want to change that. So that's where the alignment comes in, that Mike, you might put it down on paper, but get alignment by checking with Roz if she wants to change anything, add anything, or, put her own things in. And part of the plan needs to be your us time. That needs to go on the plan as well. Your marriage time or relationship time, whatever you're going to call it. Give it a name, and that goes on your plan as well. Yeah,
that works for me. Yeah, it'll get done.
Good.
We'll get done.
Well, thank you for joining me today. That was really fun. This wraps up another episode of Leadership Live. Thank you for joining us today. And now let's continue the conversation. Do you have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Connect with me on LinkedIn, or head on to my website at daphnahorovitz.com, where you can download a free sample of my new book, Weekly Habits for Extraordinary Leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend so that I can continue to reach and support leaders just like you. So tune in next week to Leadership Live, where talented people become extraordinary leaders.